Courage the Cowardly Dog looked like a show about a terrified pink dog screaming at monsters, but at its core, it followed Courage, a nervous little dog living in the middle of nowhere with sweet, trusting Muriel, miserable menace Eustace, and a sarcastic computer that somehow became his emergency hotline. And guys, under all the spiders, curses, demons, aliens, and cursed family vacations, this was really the story of one tiny dog doing the impossible for the people he loved, even when fear never left him. So today, guys, we're gonna go through the entire story of Courage the Cowardly Dog and why this tiny, strange farm dog still stuck with people more than 2 decades later. The first season locks in the formula fast. Muriel trusts too easily, Eustace makes everything worse, and Courage is the only one who notices danger before it bites. A storm forces the family to stop at Cat's motel, where Cat's immediately reveals his no dogs allowed rule. Eustace ties Courage outside, while Muriel confronts him but still leaves him there. Well, Courage soon realizes Cat's is feeding guests to giant spiders. Then Cat's turns the whole thing into a game, which only makes him creepier. Courage fights through the motel, survives the spiders, and reaches Muriel before Cat's finishes the job. Muriel gets the final hit with a tennis racket. Then the second half of the premiere goes from spider motel to attempted grandma soup. A Cajun fox decides Muriel is the perfect ingredient for his stew. Courage follows him, interrupts the recipe, and fights back until Muriel is safe. Then the show gets more surreal with a living shadow that Courage cannot bite, chase, or smack away. So instead of fighting it directly, he has to figure out what it wants. Early season 1, it proves Courage is already protecting everyone from Eustace's decisions. Also, have you ever met somebody named Eustace? I don't think I ever have. But anyway, Eustace hears about Bigfoot and immediately wants to hunt it, because why not? Then his obsession with baldness leads to dangerous hair tonic chaos. So the show establishes 2 threats: actual monsters and Eustace with confidence. Honestly, the second one feels worse. Muriel, she loses her memory after Eustace accidentally injures her while fixing the roof. Instead of helping, Eustace uses the situation to treat her like a servant. Courage, he tries to get medical help, but Le Quack arrives pretending to be a doctor while secretly trying to rob the house. Courage exposes him, uses the computer, calls the police, and keeps the scam from swallowing Muriel completely. Le Quack escapes, but Courage still saves Muriel. Then the show goes full horror. Muriel gets a new mattress, and it turns out to be possessed, because why not? Soon Muriel herself is possessed, because why not? Courage, he just cannot pull her away since the danger is inside of her now. So he searches for answers, finds an exorcism, and tries to perform it himself. That is a loyal dog. But when it comes to the exorcism, he's not qualified, he's not calm, he's not even prepared. But Muriel needs help and nobody else is coming. So the terrified dog becomes the exorcist. Then the show proves it does not need a demon to be disturbing. Fred, Muriel's creepy nephew, arrives with deeply unsettling barber energy. Courage clocks him immediately, especially when Fred says he has been naughty. Eustace then locks Courage in the bathroom with Fred. Fred slowly shaves him while telling him his life story, and Courage cannot overpower him or escape. He survives long enough to call for help, and Fred is finally taken away by the hair authorities. Muriel then gets bitten by a weremole, and Courage learns he needs the hair of the mole that bit her to save her. So he tracks the creature down, he gets the cure, and saves Muriel before the transformation becomes permanent. Then Mother's Day shifts into Eustace's family issues, showing where all of his bitterness came from. Now, it doesn't excuse him, but it does show the factory where the problem was assembled. You see what I mean? Then the Duck Brothers starts like a basic alien kidnapping, with strange duck-like aliens pulling Muriel into their mess. But Courage realizes they are trying to rescue their captured brother, so instead of just fighting them, he helps. Then Shirley brings curses and karma into the show. She is a psychic chihuahua, which already makes nowhere feel more cursed. Eustace ignores her and invites supernatural consequences, and Courage gets stuck surviving the fallout. Then what happens next is something that still haunts me all these years later. Eustace finds a stolen slab and learns it could be worth $1 million. A professor comes to retrieve it, but Eustace refuses. Then King Ramses, who the slab belongs to, appears outside the farmhouse, floating in the dark and demanding the slab back. Now, the solution should be obvious, right? Return the slab. But Eustace would apparently rather fight an ancient curse than lose potential money. So Courage has to survive the plagues, protect Muriel, and fix a problem caused entirely by Eustace's greed. After all that horror, the show gives Courage a softer story, though. A lonely hunchback arrives at the farmhouse during a storm. Eustace rejects him, but Muriel lets him stay, and Courage realizes he is not dangerous. Oh my god, what a relief. So Courage befriends him, defends him, and proves he knows the difference between someone scary and someone lonely. Then a goose squad falls for Muriel and tries to take her away. Courage stops him, since even divine birds need boundaries. Here, a mysterious queen appears through a black puddle and pulls Eustace into her world. Courage realizes the puddle is a portal and dives in to rescue him, even though Eustace barely deserves the service. Then Muriel and Eustace get pulled into a film production, but Courage realizes the director is connected to zombies. I forgot there were zombies in the show. So he investigates, exposes the undead plan, and saves the them before the production becomes their final role. And guys, by now, the show makes one rule clear. If something looks cute, it is probably dangerous. And so a tiny duckling shows up, and Muriel loves it, and Courage realizes it ain't innocent. So he has to convince everyone the adorable thing is evil before it hurts them. Then lunch becomes suspicious when Eustace drags Courage into a diner where the special is called head of beef. While Eustace eats, Courage investigates whether they are customers or ingredients. Then Cats returns. Dun dun dun. Upgrading from creepy motel owner to creepy resort owner. Wow, congratulations. Muriel takes Courage and Eustace on a cruise. Courage, he gets seasick, the engine breaks, and they end up stranded at Cat's Island Resort. Now the spa, it has a no dog rule. Guests are being transformed. Muriel becomes a washing machine and Eustace becomes a wrecking ball. Courage fights through the resort trap and rescues Muriel by turning himself into a helicopter. Cats isolates the family, but Courage ruins the plan again. Then a tornado hits and Muriel becomes vulnerable in a new way when she is changed into a younger version of herself. That puts Courage in charge again, which is insane since he is literally the dog and this might be the most annoying child in television history. Seriously, I can't look at Mac and Cheese without thinking of her. But that is the show's rhythm. Muriel gets caught in something strange, Eustace offers almost no help, and Courage becomes the responsible adult in the room. And then guys, season 1 ends with one of its creepiest images. Eusilly arrives with his stage and pulls Muriel and Eustace into his act. At first, it seems like a weird performance, but Courage realizes Eusilly wants people to become a part of the show forever. Courage stops him, but the ending stays grim. Muriel and Eustace are left as puppets, and Courage is forced to perform with them. Somehow, season 2 gets even stranger from there. We're at season 2 now. Things start off strangely sweet here. Muriel receives seeds, and Courage grows a beautiful magical tree outside the farmhouse. But Eustace sees free lumber and keeps trying to chop it down. So Courage, he has to protect something beautiful from Eustace holding an axe. That emotional thread, it continues with robot Randy, a machine built to destroy things who would rather carve tiny reindeer. Courage survives Randy, but he also realizes he's not evil. He's just trapped in the wrong role. Then Shirley returns, curses Eustace upon your shiny head, and leaves Courage cleaning up another supernatural mess caused by Eustace being awful. Then Courage gets dragged out of nowhere and into the big stinkin' city. Muriel, she gets a chance to play her sitar at Radio City Music Hall, so the family heads to New York. But a creepy cockroach criminal named Schwick forces Courage to retrieve a package before Muriel's performance. So Courage has to move through the city alone, survive its weirdest corners, get the package, and make it back before Muriel loses her chance. But anyway, the farmhouse was scary, but the city feels meaner. From there, the season starts stretching the formula in every direction, guys. Family business, it turns the farmhouse into a home invasion problem, with Courage protecting Muriel, while Eustace contributes almost nothing useful. Then 1,000 years of Courage launches the family into a future ruled by banana people. Courage has to understand the danger, keeping Muriel safe, and get everyone home. Courage Meets the Mummy brings classic monster horror, but Courage realizes there is sadness underneath the curse. Then Invisible Muriel turns his usual rescue job into nightmare hide-and-seek mode, and forcing him to protect someone he cannot even see. But wait, there's more, guys, because season 2 also gets weirdly experimental with scale. Human Habitrail brings in creepy science experiment horror with a doctor figure, turning the family into test subjects. Courage has to escape, figure out what is happening, and stop the family from being treated like lab animals. Then Mission to the Sun takes the stakes way past the farm. Courage learns the sun is about to go out, and someone has to fix it. After that, Courage the Fly makes the problem tiny but unfair. Courage gets caught in fly-related chaos, and Eustace is ready with a swatter. But in one stretch, Courage goes from lab experiment to solar repair to surviving his own family as a fly. Then the recurring villains also come back with bigger schemes. Cats returns, and returns for Muriel's candy apple recipe. Sends a mutant jam monster, traps the family, and sticks Courage in gum. Cats wins a staring contest and turns Courage into candy. Eustace scares off the monster. Courage gets Cats in the taffy machine, and Muriel reveals the secret ingredient: vinegar. Then Le Quack hypnotizes Muriel and Eustace through the TV and sends them to steal lottery money. Courage stops the robbery by leaving a money trail for police. Even the computer gets involved, possessing Eustace, and then Muriel, after claiming it could be braver with a body. But Courage proves real bravery by protecting Muriel and not showing it off. Then the season starts to lean into greed, scams, and body horror. Yes, this is still a kid show. That Hair Day brings back Eustace's mother, with Growth Industries targeting Muriel because of her rare ABXYZ blood type. Courage investigates, finds Muriel being tested on, and discovers Ma Bag owns the company. The Forbidden Hat of God turns a treasure hunt into another greed-fueled disaster. Then Serpent of Evil puts the family near a dangerous river liver monster. And the transplant gets even stranger when Eustace needs a disc transplant, leading Courage into medical panic, monster bones, and another crisis centered around Eustace's body. And honestly, guys, Eustace's spine causing a plot, it feels right, doesn't it? But then we're not done with the genre hopping because it keeps going on. Car broke, phone yes starts with an alien whose car breaks down and who only wants a phone. Courage has to understand what the alien needs before the misunderstanding spirals. Then Cowboy Courage throws him into a western setup with a dangerous figure called the Whip. And then Evil Weevil gives us another never let strangers in kind of story. A polite Weevil gets close to Muriel and Eustace, but Courage realizes it is feeding off of them. And at this point, you have to wonder, why haven't Eustace and Muriel moved? It's like the people in Gotham. What are you doing there? Well, let's get back to it. So Courage, he goes from alien roadside help to cowboy survival to exposing a bug before Muriel's kindness turns the house into a buffet. Then, near the end of the season, the farm starts feeling less like a home and more like cursed property. Now it's starting to feel cursed. Then Ma Beige, however you say it, returns, pretending to be a counselor, while Muriel and Eustace's marriage is manipulated by a ghost. Courage's solution is ridiculous, but effective. He uses the computer to get his own counseling license. Then the House of Discontent makes the land itself judge them, with the spirit of the harvest moon appearing because the farm has produced nothing. Courage has to satisfy the spirit while Eustace makes everything worse. Then a giant sand whale shows up, wanting an accordion connected to Eustace's father. The solution, it's obvious, but Eustace refuses, leaving Courage to handle another Return the Object crisis. Then guys, season 2 ends with one of the biggest threats yet. Dr. Zalust is introduced as the greatest unhappy scientist who ever lived, and his plan is to fire unhappy cannonballs across nowhere. So the villain is weaponizing sadness. Muriel has happy plums that can cheer people up, but Zalust wants everyone to feel as miserable as he does. Courage has to enter the danger, reach Zalust, and stop the cannonballs before the whole town is swallowed by unhappiness. And by the end of season 2, nowhere feels less like one haunted farmhouse and more like the center of a cursed map. But season 3 is where the show gets even harder to predict. Muriel meets Maria, one half of a criminal couple hiding near the farmhouse after breaking out of jail. But Muriel invites her in like she's just a sweet new neighbor. Courage finds out the truth, but Muriel trusts her, so he has to expose Maria and Mano before they use the family in their escape plan. By the end, Courage stops the fake neighbor act and saves Muriel from someone who looked harmless but was absolutely not. Then Courage gets replaced by a robot. I'm actually surprised it's taken this long, which is rude considering the dog already works overtime. D. Long introduces Mecha Courage, a mechanical version of Courage the Cowardly Dog, supposedly better than him in every way. Mecha Courage is stronger, louder, and built to make Courage look useless. So Courage does not win through strength, he wins through endurance. He keeps fighting, keeps getting back up, and eventually wears out Mecha Courage's battery, because the real Courage the Cowardly Dog doesn't know when to give up. And Muriel says it best, no machine could ever replace her courage. Season 3 also throws the doggy into camping horror and music business nonsense. In Campsite of Terror, Eustace falls for a get-rich-quick scheme and drags everyone into danger. Then the record deal has Eustace trying to cash in on music, since money is usually his fastest route to bad decisions. Courage's job here is cleanup duty in both aspects. Protect Muriel, survive Eustace's choices, figure out the real threat, and stop another normal activity from turning into a disaster. Then, guys, comes one of the stronger Courage and Muriel bonding episodes. So, a storm goddess arrives and becomes obsessed with Courage because he reminds her of her lost dog, Duncan. Muriel gets defensive because Courage is family. Courage tries to fix things by finding Duncan, and he uses the goddess's winds, tracks him down, and discovers that Duncan is addicted to the god bone. And Courage, he almost falls under the same spell, but Muriel, being in danger, snaps him back. He tricks Duncan and the goddess, and they go back together and return home. Thank God. But the peace doesn't last for too long around here because the Sandman sleeps gives Courage a sleep deprivation problem. That's like one of the most relatable things. But the Sandman cannot sleep. He pulls Muriel into the mess and leaves Courage solving someone else's exhaustion crisis. Then hard drive Courage turns the computer into the real threat. Eustace is sick, the computer acts up, and Muriel looks for a recipe online. Then a virus sucks Muriel inside. Courage enters the computer, tracks Muriel through the system, fights through the virus problem, and helps her escape. And the solution is peak Muriel, gelatin made with vinegar. Then the Ride of the Valkyries sends the family to Norway, where bird watching turns into mythological chaos. Then Scuba Scuba Doo puts Courage underwater, where Muriel admires sea life, while Eustace wants treasure. Courage has to save a tiny underwater civilization from Eustace's greed. Thank goodness this guy did not exist during the era of crypto scams, because y'all know he would get on that. Then Conway the Contaminationist shows up, preaching the benefits of filthy, disgusting Phil. Courage has to stop Conway's gross little lifestyle pitch before it infects the family. But really, season 3 was just changing genres every 5 minutes, and just when you think you've seen the last of them, Cats returns, this time running a submarine trip. Muriel and Courage take a vacation away from Eustace, which sounds peaceful until Captain Katz appears. Naturally, he still has the same rule though, no dogs allowed. Courage disguises himself as a ventriloquist dummy to stay near Muriel. Katz puts her in charge of tea, but Courage notices something is wrong before she does. Once Katz exposes him, Courage wrecks the controls, survives the sinking submarine, and saves everyone with air bubbles. In Curtain of Cruelty, a device starts making people cruel. Good title name. Courage has to get to the source and stop it before Nowhere becomes even nastier. The Feast of the Bullfrogs, that brings a group of thirsty bullfrogs straight to the farm. Courage has to keep Muriel safe during the amphibian takeover. And in Tulip's Worm, the danger is the garden, where a giant worm problem turns soil into a boss fight. So Courage goes from cruelty machine to frog invasion to worm crisis, and somehow that counts as one stretch of his life. Then in So in Louvre Are We Too, Muriel wins a trip to Paris and wants to see the Mona Lisa. Courage has to follow her into the art world chaos before the museum trip turns permanent. Then Night of the Scarecrow brings the horror back with a county fair and a scarecrow problem. Mondo Magic adds a magician who pulls the family into a performance trap. And then Watch the Birdies starts with Muriel feeding sweet little birds. Courage realizes they are not harmless though and saves her from another cute thing that did not deserve trust. Guys, by this point, season 3 starts treating every normal part of life like a setup for disaster. Dinner, it turns suspicious and fishy business, where sushi spirals into food-adjacent chaos. Television gets just as ugly and angry, nasty people, with cruelty turned into entertainment. The family caught inside the nastiest kind of media setup. Then the danger moves back to that nice old farm. Dome of Doom turns hunger and bad gardening into a survival problem under a suspicious dome. And before Courage can breathe, the snowman returns in Snowman's Revenge, looking for a new frozen home after the North Pole melts. That's really depressing. But so, in one stretch, Courage has to survive food horror, camera cruelty, plant danger, and a frozen revenge plan before the farm becomes a replacement Arctic nightmare. The Quilt Club, this one starts with Muriel's quilting hobby, which should be harmless, but this is Nowhere, so you know that is not gonna happen. The hobby pulls her towards a strange group, and Courage has to figure out what they really want before Muriel gets stitched into trouble. Then Swindle and Wind has Muriel looking for an anniversary gift at a bazaar, and only for a strange wind-based scam to pull her into danger. Courage has to stop another domestic errand from becoming supernatural fraud, and at this point, the safest gift would probably be nothing. Then comes one of the best weird satire episodes in the whole show, guys. A commercial grabs everyone's attention and pushes one product, flan. I don't think I've ever actually had flan, by the way, but soon people are obsessed with it, asking for flan, smelling flan, chanting flan, needing flan. And soon Courage realizes the town is being hypnotized through television and traces it back to flan-tasy flan. Flan-tasy? It's like fantasy, but flan-tasy, see? So he has to break the media spell before everyone eats themselves into a pudding-brained disaster. Even Courage starts getting pulled in by the ad repeating, "Buy flan-tasy flan." It's media addiction horror, but make it dessert. And then season 3 closes with the family taking an island vacation, which means disaster packed a swimsuit too. A volcano god demands a human offering or else the island gets destroyed. Naturally, Muriel ends up in danger because if someone needs to be sacrificed, this show knows exactly who Courage has to say. So Courage has to stop the ritual, protect Muriel, and prevent a full volcanic disaster. Season 4 then opens by proving Nowhere still has plenty of random disasters left. The farm, it floods in A Beaver's Tale, Eustace claims the new lake as his own, and Courage has to handle the disaster before the house becomes waterfront property for all the wrong reasons. Then the Nutcracker turns a junkyard trip into rat-filled danger. Rumpelstiltskin pulls the family into fairy tale trouble, forcing Courage to solve the name game before Muriel gets trapped in another magical disaster. First episode in, and we've got floods, rats, junkyards, magical scams. We're so back. And the season keeps building that cursed property feeling. House Calls brings in a lonely doctor, but the real danger is his house, which has been alone for years and handles rejections about as well as every other building in this show. Courage investigates, figures out what the house wants, and protects Muriel before the visit turns into a trap. Then Le Quack returns with a hot air balloon scam, because this duck can turn any fake job into a crime. But windmill vandals matters more. Courage learns the windmill was built 250 years ago to protect the farmland from vandals, using magic symbols carved into the blades. So he has to restore that protection before an older curse breaks through. Then season 4 moves through a fast stretch of pure Courage nonsense. Muriel eats a giant carrot and starts expanding, leaving Courage to stop a garden issue from becoming an explosion crisis. Profiles in Courage pulls him into a more character-focused story about identity and reputation. While Squatting Tiger, Hidden Dog throws him into martial arts chaos. Muted Muriel gives him a more direct rescue problem when Muriel loses her voice and cannot properly call for help. Then Aqua Farmer puts Eustace in a swimming situation that he ain't got no business entering. Food of the Dragon adds dragon trouble, as I'm sure you could expect, because by this point, if something moves, swims, curses, or breathes fire, Courage has to handle it. Honestly, they should just put Courage the Cowardly Dog in Avengers Doomsday. I would watch that. Then, The Mask takes the show somewhere heavier. A masked cat named Kitty attacks Courage because she believes all dogs are evil. Muriel misunderstands and invites her inside. Kitty explains that her best friend Bunny is trapped with an abusive gangster named Mad Dog. At first, Courage thinks Kitty's mask is the problem. Once he understands the truth, he goes after Bunny, helps free her, and proves to Kitty that not every dog is like Mad Dog. And this one matters because Courage is not fighting a monster, he's helping someone else escape one. Blast of the Star Makers is one of the emotional peaks of the show. Courage discovers a dying squid-like creature, and Muriel realizes this being creates the stars in the sky. But the Star Maker is not a threat. She is grieving and trying to protect her eggs. If they're not saved, there will be no new stars. So Courage's solution is not to defeat anything, it is to protect life. He helps save the eggs and make sure something beautiful survives after loss. Sometimes Courage saves fragile things that cannot save themselves. Then the show starts looking backwards. Son of the Chicken from Outer Space brings back the mythology from the original pilot through the chicken's son. Muriel and Eustace redecorate the old chicken coop, while Eustace complains about the paint. But the real problem is alien revenge, and Courage has to protect the family from the next generation of the show's first nightmare. Courageous cure turns him into part of a strange medical experiment. Courage has to survive the cure and protect Muriel and Eustace from becoming collateral damage. Then Ball of Revenge basically opens a final boss lobby. Eustace helps gather Courage's old enemies for revenge. Cats, Le Quack, the Weremole, the Cajun Fox, the Giant Fish, and the Puddle Queen. Their chosen weapon is dodgeball. These are pieces of Courage's history coming back at once. They underestimate him because he looks small and scared, and that's their mistake, because he wins again. Then before the finale, the show gives us a last few oddities. In Cabaret Courage, Courage gets pulled into the creepy Hollywood cabaret. Then Wrath of the Librarian turns books, rules, and punishment into the problem. Courage has to survive the performance trap, navigate the punishment logic, and protect his family from another pair of weird authority figures. These keep the surreal energy alive, but the show is clearly saving its biggest emotional punches for the end. Then, after all this time, we learn finally why Courage is so afraid. He flashes back to puppyhood, when he was happy with his parents, then his head gets stuck and they take him to the vet. At first, it seems normal, then the vet asks to speak with his parents privately. Courage hears them screaming for help, and the vet has been kidnapping dogs for a space experiment and launching them away in rockets. Courage tries to stop it, but he's only a puppy. He fails, watches the rocket launch, and the trauma stays with him. So when Muriel and Eustace take him back to that same vet in the present, Courage is facing the memory that made him afraid. This time, though, he fights back. When the vet tries to launch Muriel and Eustace too, Courage saves them and sends the vet into space instead. Then the final flashback shows why Muriel matters so much. After losing his parents, baby Courage was alone until Muriel found him, comforted him, and named him Courage. And that changes the whole show. Every time Muriel is in danger, Courage is saving the family that he has left. And then the series ends with perfect. Courage, he keeps failing at simple tasks, and Eustace tells him he does everything wrong. Then the perfectionist appears and forces him through impossible lessons. Perfect posture, perfect walking, perfect speech, perfect building, perfect sleeping. The more she demands, the worse Courage feels. He starts having nightmares, hearing that he is not perfect over and over again. The threat is the belief that being scared or different means he is broken. Then a little fish tells him the truth. There is no such thing as perfect. He is beautiful as he is, and with all of his imperfections, he can still do anything. So Courage does not win by becoming flawless. He wins by refusing the idea that he has to be. When the perfectionist demands a perfect number 6, Courage gives her what he can, and she melts down. Courage ends the series with Muriel and Eustace, still strange, still imperfect, still his family. After remembrance where Courage's fear came from, Perfect explains why that fear never made him weak. But in Straight Outta Nowhere, Scooby-Doo meets Courage and gives him one more victory lap. Scooby and Courage hear a strange noise, the gang ends up in nowhere, cicadas attack, the mayor ignores the obvious danger, and a queen cicada becomes the big threat. Courage teams up with Mystery Inc., uses the computers, and eventually becomes a giant to fight the queen. Then the reveal connects back to Cats and Le Quack. The crossover, guys, it's the bonus curtain call that we all really needed. And one last reminder that Courage may be scared of everything on the surface, but everything should probably be terrified of Courage and the things that stupid dog will do for love.